Part 64. Hong Kong movies, I can see the loyalty value, I am not panicked at all. Author, Ban Wanqing Buletin Liang. Chapter 631. Li Qing looked at the Lokai chef and shook his head. Don't say I won't help you. Just now, President Meng said he would cut you into 100 pieces. I'll give you a half-price discount. 50 yuan. The Lokai chef was stunned. Is there any difference between 100 yuan and 50 yuan? Spare my life. While wailing in pain, the Lokai chef was dragged away by the hangman's younger brother. What awaits him will be pain and death. Meng Sun looked at the Lokai chef who was dragged away with a gloomy face. Damn, I didn't expect that this kid who speaks fluent Chinese is actually a spy. Alas, the little life is still trying to destroy me. There are all kinds of infiltration methods, and it involves all walks of life. No one would think that these people are spies. Li Qing said comfortingly. President Meng, I suggest that we check the people who came from China during this period. Maybe we can get different results. Further, these people are also a security risk in Chinatown. Li Qing looked at Meng Sun and suggested. Meng Sun nodded. Anyway, these people are illegal immigrants. Even if they die in the United States, no one will know. Meng Sun also gave them a meal because they were both Chinese. Now that he knew that these were all spies who had been cleared out by his hometown, he didn't need to be polite to them. Alas, I wanted to invite you to have an authentic Shandong cuisine, but you see how it has become. Let's go to Juxinlu directly to eat. Meng Sun looked at Li Qing embarrassedly. He had originally taken this opportunity to get close to Li Qing, but he didn't expect this to happen, which made him a little embarrassed. No need to bother, I just came to Chinatown casually. President Meng, you should pay more attention to your health. After all, you have eaten his dishes for so many days, and it's hard to guarantee. Meng Sun hadn't thought about it, but when Li Qing reminded him, his face became very ugly. No. No way. He said no, but he was very honest in his heart, and kept muttering, it's really possible. Haha, I won't stay any longer, we'll have dinner next time. Li Qing laughed, waved his hand, and left with Zhang Dongziu. Meng Sun politely stayed for a few more words and sent Li Qing out. As soon as Li Qing left, Meng Sun immediately asked his men to prepare a car to go to the hospital for an examination. It's better to be safe than sorry. At this time, Zhang Dongziu approached his elder brother Li Qing. Will that kid really poison you? Li Qing sneered, I'm trying to scare the old man Meng Sun. This trip can't be in vain. Meng Sun must realize the seriousness of the matter before he can really take it seriously. This matter can't be left to Meng Sun alone. Dongziu, let our people also check if there are any spies who are living a small life. It would be bad if the descendants of these people return to their hometown to make trouble in a few years under the identity of overseas Chinese. After confirming, you don't need to report to me to directly reclaim the land. Zhang Dongziu nodded hurriedly after hearing his elder brother's order, indicating that he would let his men screen these people one by one. The next few days were very peaceful. There was no dog-blooded incident, and no villain jumped out to be slapped in the face, which really made Li Qing feel comfortable for a few days. However, since William became the Minister of Defense, some politicians in the United States have slowly approached Li Qing, hoping to gain his support. After all, every politician has a financial sponsor behind him, and Li Qing, as a big arms dealer, has become a hot commodity in their eyes. Li Qing did not refuse the situation, but selected a few more promising ones to support. Don't put all your eggs in the same basket, this is the golden saying taught to him by his ancestors. Friday came soon, and William obviously attached great importance to this banquet. He called Li Qing several times, fearing that he would forget. Li Qing promised him that he would attend on time, and he was relieved. At about 7 o'clock on Friday night, Li Qing just got off his Rolls-Royce and saw William's assistant waiting in front of the villa. Seeing Li Qing coming, the assistant hurriedly stepped forward and walked a few steps. "Mr. Li, you are here. The minister is inside, I will take you in." Li Qing nodded. He saw some policemen and Faberla around the villa, and the security factor was very high. "Sorry, both of you. You can't bring guns in." The guard directly blocked the Crow and Zhang Dongzhou behind Li Qing. The two looked at their eldest brother Li Qing, and after getting a signal, they handed the gun to the guard. It is impossible for something to go wrong with this level of security. After all, there are high-ranking officials inside. If someone has an accident, the security guards will suffer. "Hey, here, Li Qing." William noticed Li Qing as soon as he entered the villa, and quickly apologized to the people he was chatting with and walked towards Li Qing. "You guys walk around." Li Qing turned his head and said to Zhang Dongzhou and Crow. "Okay, big brother." William opened his arms and hugged Li Qing. "Haha, thank you for arriving on time tonight." "Come on, William." Li Qing was intoxicated by William's strong body odor and quickly pushed him away. "The people we invited this time are all people who have a say in the Angsa group. I will introduce them to you later." William pulled Li Qing to look around and whispered. Li Qing nodded. The Angsa group is not like the Hebrew consortium, which is maintained by blood. There are all kinds of people in it. As long as they have the same interests, they can join the Angsa group. It is more inclusive than the Hebrew. This is also the reason why the Angsa group has been able to compete with the Hebrew consortium. But it also has its own shortcomings, lack of cohesion and unity, especially when there are inconsistencies in the interests of members. And, don't be surprised, there will be a show later. William looked around and whispered in Li Qing's ear in a vulgar way. Knowing that Li Qing doesn't like Western women very much, this time William specially invited the finale star from Asia. Li Qing looked at William's mysterious look. "Haha, I'm looking forward to it. Let's go, I'll introduce you to the top executives of the Angsa group." William pulled Li Qing into the largest circle, where 7 or 8 people were chatting. These people knew the relationship between William and Li Qing, and they were all very polite to Li Qing. Through William's introduction, these people include the Senate, the Court, Congress, the State Department, etc., basically involving all departments of the United States. It can be said that as long as these people are willing, the united power can overthrow the president. Through chatting, Li Qing also learned the secret that is not a secret in the United States. In reality, the president is rotated by the two parties, but in fact, it is rotated by the people of the Angsa group and the Hebrew consortium. The current president of the United States was nominated by the Hebrew consortium, so he is extremely tough on Middle East affairs. Li Qing touched his chin thoughtfully. No wonder the black man in his previous life started to withdraw troops from Goat country and Barren country after he took the presidency. It seems that it is not just because of the reduction of military expenditure in the United States. The President of the United States is also influenced by the group he belongs to. After all, it represents the interests of those people. Hong Kong movies, I can see the loyalty value, I am not panicked at all. Author, Ban Wanqing Bulletin Liang. Chapter 632. Mr. Li is really young and promising. Only now do I realize that you are so young. Yes, I really admire Mr. Li Qing. I'm really envious that William has such good friends. Li Qing didn't take these compliments seriously. After all, everyone was carrying the sedan chair. On the other hand, William next to him looked happy. "Sigh, you people have only seen Li Qing now, but I discovered Li Qing's excellence from the beginning." He recalled the first time he met Li Qing, when the forces of the New World had not yet taken root in the beautiful country. It was only because Li Qing stopped the terrorists on the plane that he personally received Li Qing as Deputy Minister of Defense. Unexpectedly, in just a few years, Li Qing's power developed rapidly, and he actually became a noble person who supported his rise to power. I can only say that time is destiny. Li Qing faced a circle of compliments and naturally couldn't do anything. He directly picked up the wine glass. Everyone here is the mainstay of the beautiful country, and I am just an ordinary arms dealer. Let me know if you can use it in the future. The eyes of everyone in the circle lit up. To be honest, they were not short of money, but there were some things that they really couldn't come forward with, and sometimes they even had to swallow their anger when something happened. With Li Qing's words, asking him for help next time won't be so abrupt. Come, let's all have a drink. William smiled and raised his glass. This was the purpose of asking Li Qing to attend the meeting. It was a win-win situation for everyone. Cheers. Cheers. A group of people raised their glasses to each other and then drank it all. William took Li Qing and walked around in small circles for a few more times before stopping at the dining table to pick up his meal. William, what happened to the test I asked you to do? A few days ago, Li Qing asked William to help find out the attitude of the upper management of Angsa Group towards Emperor Pu. Can I not take your matter to heart? Most people remain neutral. After all, this matter has nothing to lose to them. After listening to William's words, Li Qing nodded. This incident was almost as he predicted. Angsa Group did not dislike Emperor Pu. On the contrary, the Hebrew side was extremely disgusted with Emperor Puda. But they have little influence on the American military. Even if they object, they will not affect the military's decision. Li Qing knew very well that the Hebrew consortium had already begun to deploy in Urmao, and the famous oligarchs in Urmao all had Hebrew ancestry. They have long regarded Urmao as their own. According to Li Qing's guess, the Hebrew consortium continued to use Urmao to tease Emperor Pu's nerves, just to bring the Angsa Group in. After all, without an army, financial means alone cannot collapse the Maoist economy. But there is one person you have to be careful about. He is also the only person in the Angsa Group who opposes neutrality. That person is Senator Johnson. William pointed at a middle-aged man with a middle parting who was standing in front of the dining table to take his meal. Li Qing shook his head gently, a counselor. Don't underestimate him, behind him is the President of the Senate and current Vice President Kamala. William said solemnly. Li Qing shrugged. In this matter, as long as the majority of the Angsa Group remains neutral and the military remains neutral, it doesn't matter if there are one or two opponents. Hey, it's almost time, let's go. William pulled Li Qing and quickly walked to the small movie room in the villa. Seeing William in action, the others looked at their watches and walked in with smiles, as if it had become a routine. Li Qing was a little curious about the program arranged by William and came to the small movie room. There were several metal pillars standing on the small stage. Li Qing had a black line on his head. William, don't tell me that the show will be pole dancing. When William saw Li Qing's eyes, he knew what he was thinking, and said angrily, take back your clear and stupid eyes. This is elegant pole dancing. What the hell is the difference between this and a nightclub? Can his pole dancing be divided into elegance and vulgarity? Li Qing spread his hands. He wanted to see what elegant pole dancing was. All the lights in the movie room suddenly went out, and then a beam of light shone directly on the steel pipe. I saw a tall woman wearing a red evening dress walking slowly from the darkness. Li Qing squinted his eyes. It was too dark to see the woman clearly. It wasn't until the woman swayed closer to the steel pipe that Li Qing saw clearly. William, who the hell is this? Is this the surprise William gave himself? I don't even know this woman myself. Huh? It's from the Bang Girl group. I temporarily borrowed this from somewhere else. Li Qing. Think about it, if a person whom people regard as a goddess dances in t-shirt here, we will be excited or excited. Li Qing. He didn't know what to say. Is the Minister of Defense of the beautiful country at this level? The men in the movie room were a little crazy. They each held an electric water gun and started squirting at the pole dancing woman, and each one of them screamed. Obviously these usually sanctimonious politicians are no different from ordinary men. "How's it going? Is it good enough?" William asked in a low voice. "Mad, I'm afraid you are seriously ill." Li Qing rolled his eyes. He didn't want to be with a group of lunatics. He, let her accompany you tonight." William winked. Li Qing shook his head. Obviously he didn't want to get into this kind of thing. The beautiful country is open-minded, but he can't ignore meat and vegetables. In this regard, he is quite picky about food. "Don't like it? There are more to come. These are the goddesses in the eyes of ordinary people, and they are all first-line stars from various countries." William's voice fell, and several women came out from the dark. This time, they all had Western faces and were dressed very coolly. "Tisk tisk, really good at playing." Li Qing shook his head. These women looked unattainable in front of ordinary people, but now they are top-notch playthings in the eyes of the upper class. William didn't see the excitement on Li Qing's face, and said puzzledly, "Oxford University has newly developed a kind of aphrodisiac. Do you want someone to send you some? Get lost. I'll take it out and it's 10 centimeters longer than you." Li Qing glared at William. His ability in that aspect may not be matched by all the men present. William snorted in boredom and continued to watch the performance. The performance took a long time to end, and basically every guest hugged a woman he liked and left. Of course, these women were voluntary. After all, there is a reward for giving, and these women came for better resources. Of course, there are advanced ways to play for the advanced, but in essence, there is no difference between street girls, just a transaction. Only the Korean girl group member was left standing there alone, and no one chose her. Everyone knew that she was reserved for Li Qing, and everyone was very tactful. But Li Qing didn't want to. He was not a stud, and the woman might be a goddess in the eyes of others, but in his eyes, she was not as good as a student girl. "What? No one wants you? Then come with me, Chenk." The harsh name made Li Qing, who was about to leave, turn around, and saw that Johnson, whom William mentioned, stretched out his hand to pull the girl group member. At this time, William's face was not good either. Li Qing was his friend, and he was Asian, and Johnson actually used the word chink in front of him. This was not only disrespectful to Li Qing, but also disrespectful to him. William was about to step forward, but Li Qing pulled him and showed his white teeth. "Don't worry about it, let me do it." You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Hong Kong movies, I can see the loyalty value, I am not panicked at all. Author, Ban Wanqing Buletin Liang. Chapter 633. Li Qing saw Johnson glance this way from a distance and knew that this guy did it on purpose. He picked out the only Asian among so many women to humiliate. Damn it if it wasn't because of him, Li Qing. What's more, Johnson already has a blonde and blue-eyed girl in his arms. The Asian female star on the stage was also panicked. Before she came, she was told to accompany a very powerful Asian man. Now the white man's behavior was obviously in conflict with that man, and she didn't want to get involved. Although he tried hard to refuse, he was still not as strong as the man and was dragged off the stage. Li Qing smiled and shook his head, took off his suit jacket and handed it to William. "Hey, there's Fo Bowl outside, don't kill him." William took Li Qing's coat and whispered to him. In fact, he had already been prepared to wipe Li Qing's butt. After all, he was also very unhappy with this man. He had just become the Minister of Defense, but he was relying on the people behind him to not give him any face. "Hey, redneck." Redneck, a term commonly used to discriminate against white people. Let her go. Li Qing tied his tie on his right hand as he walked, so that the hitting would be more comfortable. Johnson's face changed when he heard this obviously discriminatory language. What did you say? Redneck. If you don't understand, I can spell it out for you separately. Redneck. At this time, William, who was watching the show next to him, almost stopped laughing. Li Qing was still as mean as ever. Even the Asian female star looked at Li Qing in surprise. It was the first time she had seen such a person so arrogant in front of a white man. At least I haven't encountered it in Bangsa country. Men in Bangsa country will nod and bow down when they see any white man, and give women to white people to play with, just like her. Johnson's face turned red with anger. He grew up in an upper-class family, and no one had ever dared to be so rude to him. Haha, it turns out that Minister William's friends are so unqualified. How did you get into the circle? Johnson pointed at Li Qing and yelled rudely. I have to say that this Johnson's emotional intelligence is really low, and he directly offended William and Li Qing with one sentence. William glanced at Johnson, walked out of the movie room door silently with Li Qing's coat in his hand, and closed the door thoughtfully before leaving. Johnson's expression changed and he looked at Li Qing, who was slowly approaching. What do you want to do? Hit me. Li Qing frowned and glanced at him. This guy seemed a little pretentious. This Johnson is not afraid, he seems to be a little bit hopeful. He looked thoughtfully at the shiny brooch on Johnson's suit and had some guesses. Haha, what are you talking about? We are all civilized people, how can we use violence? Johnson didn't expect Li Qing to be so rational, and started to verbally provoke him again. Tisk, tisk, they say Mr. Li Qing is a ruthless person, but now it's nothing more than that. Yes, yes. Hey, New World, why not just stop doing arms and go do charity? Ah, yes, yes. Yes, yes. Johnson was so angry that he almost choked to death on yeah, but Li Qing didn't take the bait. This really didn't occur to him. From his understanding, those gangsters were the most concerned about face. Unexpectedly, Li Qing acted out of common sense and wanted to hit him just now, but now he was so easy to talk to. Within a few words, Li Qing came directly to Johnson. This is my female companion, I want to take her away. Li Qing grabbed the female star and turned away. He was now sure that there was definitely something fishy about Johnson. Most likely it was prepared for myself. However, he made a big taboo, that is, carrying equipment on this occasion. If word of tonight's incident spreads, haha, Minister William will bear the brunt, and the entire UNCSA senior management may be affected. It seems that Johnson also has other purposes for joining the UNCSA group. No wonder he has to agree to neutrality. It seems that there is something wrong with Johnson's position. William was straining his ears to listen to the sounds inside the door. Why haven't Johnson's screams been heard yet? Bang! The door opened and hit William directly on the forehead. Ouch! William, what are you doing? Li Qing pulled the female star and looked at him funny. Ahem, I'm waiting for you. How about it? Are your legs broken? Don't worry, I'll settle this matter for you, just the vice president. William patted his chest and said. To be honest, with William's current status, apart from being a little wary of the president, he doesn't have to give face to the vice president. Go back by yourself. Li Qing waved his hand and told the female star to go away, and the female star left in a hurry. Before leaving, she glanced at Li Qing through the light. After all, Li Qing left a deep impression on her today. When the female star walked away, Li Qing pulled William aside. What's the matter? You're not going to kill Johnson, are you? William's expression changed. If someone was killed, it would really not end well. Li Qing rolled his eyes. Do you think I'm stupid? Johnson has surveillance or listening equipment on him. When William heard Li Qing's words, he was stunned for a moment, and then his face turned livid. He knew the consequences of spreading such things. At this time, Johnson quietly came out of the back door and was about to leave the villa. William waved to the security personnel, who quickly ran over. William pointed in the direction of Johnson and whispered a few words to him. The security officer nodded and led the people to Johnson. "Let's go, sit in the house, and there will be a result in a while." William smiled and returned the suit in his hand to Li Cheng. The two walked directly to the living room of the villa. "How do you plan to deal with this matter?" Li Cheng sat on the sofa and lit a cigarette and asked. William was silent for a while. "If it is true, Johnson has reached the end." Li Cheng also nodded. "The ANSA group will not let the traitor go. I am very puzzled. Why did Johnson do this? Just for me?" Li Cheng looked at William with a smile. William shook his head. He couldn't understand why Johnson did this. There was no obvious conflict between Johnson and Li Cheng. Under Li Cheng's deliberate guidance, William also began to doubt whether he was from the Hebrew Consortium. Neither of them spoke, and the hall fell into silence. The security officer hurried in, glanced at Li Cheng, leaned down and whispered a few words in William's ear. William twitched his mouth and waved his hand to let the security guards go out. "How is it?" Li Cheng wondered. "Ahem, we found a listening device on him. His goal is to put you in jail. Once you hit him, these will become evidence." Li Cheng couldn't sit still. "Oh, shit. Did I have a grudge against him before?" William glanced at Li Cheng. "It's not a grudge. Johnson and Holland are both backed by Vice President Kamala." "Haha, that's great. You didn't tell me earlier." Li Cheng glared at William. William smiled bitterly. "How could I know that they had such a deep relationship that they dared to do this for a dead person?" Li Cheng frowned. He felt that something was wrong and there must be something William didn't know. Hong Kong movies, I can see the loyalty value. I am not panicked at all. Author, Ban Wanqing Buletin Liang. Chapter 634. Where are the people? Outside, you have to wait a few days before you take action. It's too obvious now. William knew what Li Cheng wanted to do, and he had no intention of stopping it. Li Cheng nodded. He didn't want to take action now. After all, some people saw the conflict with Johnson just now. If something happens to Johnson now, there is no guarantee that he will not be suspected. "Yeah, I know. Is there any movement over there at Hebrews?" Haranda was killed by him, and there was no movement from the Hebrew Consortium. This was a bit unusual. William shook his head. Hebrew Consortium has been very honest recently. Maybe they are holding back some big moves. "Well, I'll go back then." Li Cheng saw that it was getting late and also said goodbye. "Hey, don't you want to take the star with you?" Li Cheng waved his hand. He couldn't get used to mixed dumpling skin. As soon as he went out, Wu Wu and Zhang Dongxiu followed him. "Dongxiu, ask your brothers to check on Senator Johnson in the Senate. I've been keeping an eye on him these days. If there's anything unusual, let me know immediately," Li Cheng ordered. Zhang Dongxiu nodded, indicating that he understood. Seeing that his eldest brother Li Cheng did not confirm the arrangement, Crow smiled and approached Li Cheng. "Hey, brother, I heard that there is an aphrodisiac in Oxford." Li Cheng raised his eyebrows. "Where did you hear that?" "No, I'll tell you Crow to take less Western medicine. I'll ask if there is an old Chinese doctor in my hometown some other time. I'll let him take a look at it next time I go back." "No, brother," Crow said anxiously. Li Cheng waved his hand. "You don't need to thank me. This is what I should do as the eldest brother." "No." Li Cheng didn't listen to the Crow at all. Those Western medicines could only treat the symptoms but not the root cause. If the Crow continued to eat those things, his body would be damaged sooner or later. Johnson had a gloomy face. He had just come out of the villa, and the monitoring equipment on his chest had been confiscated. Everything tonight was planned by him. As long as he is a little injured tonight, he can use public opinion to make the matter bigger. William may not be able to keep Li Qing by then. After all, in this beautiful country, an Asian man innocently beat a white man, and some white supremacists came out to cry out. When the time comes, not only will Li Qing take advantage of the situation, but it will also affect William, the Minister of Defense. "Sir, where are we going now?" the Swedish female star next to Johnson asked in a low voice. Johnson gave her a disgusted look. "You can find a hotel to stay in. Don't worry, I promise you there will definitely be no shortage of resources." The female star's face, which was still smiling at first, froze. This was the first time she had seen such a boring man. Just now she tried to hold Johnson's hand, but he dodged it. The female star stopped talking, just walked to the roadside, hailed a taxi and left on her own. Johnson took a deep breath. This plan was his own, and now that William has discovered it, he will inevitably be criticized. Ding ding ding, Johnson's cell phone rang in his pocket. He looked at the familiar number and picked up the phone. "Damn it, I told you to calm down, but you just didn't listen. What on earth do you want to do? It's not us who have the final say in this beautiful country." An extremely angry voice came from the other end of the phone. "Haylanda died so mysteriously? Kamala, are you willing?" Johnson clenched his fists. So what can he do if he is not willing to give in? He was the one who provoked William in the first place. I once told him that the position of Minister of Defense has been decided. He also tried to bring William down again and again. If I hadn't suppressed the doubts in the consortium, he would have died long ago. He won't wait until he goes to jail to be killed. Kamala sighed on the other end of the phone. Political struggle is not a child's play. Both Haranda and Johnson underestimated William and Li Qing. Then his tone slowed down and he said softly, "Revenge must be taken step by step. Li Qing is not a fool, and neither is William. If you do this, besides making yourself embarrassed, you won't be able to hurt them at all. Let's end this matter." After saying that, he hung up the phone. Johnson heard a busy signal on the phone and hung up the phone angrily. "Haha, if it doesn't work this time, just do it next time. If it doesn't work next time, just keep looking for opportunities. They always relax one day." He didn't intend to listen to Kamala. He always felt that Li Qing had a big secret, otherwise William wouldn't test the attitude of the upper management of the Angsa group towards Emperor Pu. Even if he can't kill Li Qing for the time being, he can still cause him some trouble. Johnson held his hands tightly. "Haranda, just wait, I will let the person who killed you go accompany you." "Brother, this is what Johnson has been doing these days." Zhang Dongzhou handed the details to his eldest brother Li Qing. Li Qing took the information in his hand and looked through it casually. "Huh? Are you saying that there was no woman to accompany him home or to the hotel that night?" He clearly saw Johnson leaving with the woman, but he didn't expect to be so careful. The boy who stayed at the station stayed at Johnson's house all night, but he didn't see the woman. He probably didn't bring the woman home. Li Qing nodded. "This is a bit strange. Could it be that Johnson is Lu Ziyi? Don't you eat all the fat in your mouth?" He looked at the information carefully and found that Johnson's life was much more regular than he thought. Go to work, eat, go home, 3 o'clock and one line. Huh? According to the information, the lights in his home are always on? Even until 1 or 2 o'clock. Even the curtains are drawn during the day? Li Qing asked curiously. Yes, he sleeps late at night. That's strange. Who draws the curtains in broad daylight? Unless, there is something shameful. And Johnson lives alone, without a woman. Why does he sleep so late? Just staying up late? Or some secrets? He looked at the time. It was just a little after 9 in the morning. Johnson should be in the office. Let's go and take a look at his house. An hour later, Li Qing brought Zhang Dongzhou and Crow to Johnson's house. Pa the professional locksmith quickly opened the door. Li Qing looked at the dark living room, turned on the lights. The younger brother turned on all the lights in the house when he heard the sound, and they could see the situation inside clearly. Well, the situation in the house is no different from the dormitory of single dogs, with scattered clothes everywhere. Zhang Dongzhou and Crow took the younger brother to search for all suspicious things without waiting for Li Qing's instructions. Zhang Dongzhou took people to the first floor, and Crow took people directly to the second floor. Crow waved his hand and asked his brothers to disperse and search, while he went to Johnson's bedroom. The bedroom was dark, and the curtains were drawn even in broad daylight. Crow frowned and turned on the light in the bedroom. A huge group photo hanging on the head of the bed caught his attention. Johnson and another man stood on both sides, and the man standing in the middle was particularly familiar to him. That man was the Deputy Minister of the Interior, Harlander, who was killed by him. What shocked him even more was that the wall was covered with photos of people and some circuit diagrams that he couldn't understand. The two most conspicuous photos turned out to be his eldest brother Li Qing and Minister of Defense William. Hong Kong movies, I can see the loyalty value, I am not panicked at all. Author, Ban Wanqing Buletin Liang. Chapter 635. Crow didn't dare to delay and ran downstairs to report the matter to his elder brother Li Qing. Li Qing went upstairs and entered the bedroom. He didn't care about the photo of himself and William, but was attracted by the large group photo on the wall. He knew Johnson and Harlanda, and he also investigated the man on the other side, who was Vice President Kamala. This is a threesome, Li Qing smiled mysteriously. At this time, Crow found some toys that he often saw in the closet. Looking at the toys and the group photo on the wall, Crow shuddered. Brother, these three people can't be. Li Qing looked at him with amusement. Yes, it's what you guessed. Crow dropped the toy in his hand with disgust and ran directly into the bathroom to wash his hands. He can accept lesbians and even play with them. But gay men, I feel disgusted just thinking about it. Li Qing ignored Crow, who was washing his hands desperately, but walked to the wall and carefully looked at the line chart drawn by Johnson. I have to say that Johnson is still somewhat capable, and he can actually discover his intentions with clues. But that's all. The big question mark on the wall shows that Johnson has not guessed Li Qing's true purpose. Or because the amount of information is too small, he can't guess Li Qing's next move. A little clever Li Qing looked at the wall and nodded. Just based on Johnson's performance at Williams Villa last time, it can be seen that this person has character defects and is not a qualified politician. Putting himself in his shoes, if Li Qing was Johnson, he would definitely make plans and kill with one blow. Unfortunately, now that Li Qing knows everything, Johnson has no chance. Destroy all the photos on the wall and clean them up, Li Qing tidied up his coat and ordered. Knowing that there is a venomous snake staring at him in the dark, he will not leave any trouble and is ready to take action tonight. But this time it can't be too obvious. After all, Johnson has Vice President Kamala behind him. As long as there is no evidence that Li Qing did it, no one can do anything to him. Johnson stopped writing and stretched. To outsiders, he seemed to be working, but in fact, he was studying Li Qing these days. The notebook was full of dense lines. He collected some personal information about Li Qing through Faberla. He really discovered something. Even though he was on the opposite side of Li Qing, he still admired this person. From a small gangster with no background in Hong Kong, China, to the leader of a multinational group and a major arms dealer, Li Qing is a legend. You can only blame yourself for killing Haranda, Johnson muttered indignantly. He found that Li Qing was not without any weaknesses. This person valued friendship too much, especially for those backbone elites who had been with him from the beginning. Haranda also touched his bottom line, so he suffered this misfortune. Johnson looked at the names on the notebook: Crow, Zhang Dongxiu, Zhang Qiandan, Tian Yangsheng. He drew a big circle around Tian Yangshen's name. He thought that this person was in charge of Eastern European arms trade in the New World and ranked among the top few in the New World. If he could be taken down, the arms trade in the New World would be equivalent to losing half of the sky, and Li Qing would also lose a right-hand man. The most important thing is that he wants to blame Tian Yangshen's death on Deng Mao, so that Li Qing will completely break with Putin. He can't do this. He has to rely on Kamala. He knows that the United States must have an insider in Deng Mao's KGB. As long as Tian Yangshen's life and death are in the hands of the KGB, the yellow mud in Putin's crotch is either shit or shit. With Li Qing's personality, he will definitely turn against Deng Mao, and then no matter what Li Qing and Putin plan, it will come to nothing. His idea is good, but the problem is how to convince Kamala. After all, Kamala has always opposed him to provoke Li Qing. In his opinion, Kamala didn't want to avenge Haranda at all, and completely failed the comradeship between them. It seems that it's time to open up to Kamala and have a frank chat. Johnson stood up and looked at the sky getting darker and darker. Without Haranda, he felt more and more lonely. After sorting out the sundries, he walked out the door in his coat. Half an hour later, Johnson returned home. He didn't notice anything unusual. He took off his coat and hung it on the hanger as usual. He took off his shoes, stepped on the floor in his socks, walked towards the kitchen, and turned on the coffee machine as usual. Then, there was no more. He saw a person standing in the shadows, leaning against the wall and looking at him with a smile. "Who are you?" Johnson quietly reached into his pocket and planned to call the police secretly. Pop! The light suddenly came on, and the lazy man smiled. "You can call me Crow." At this time, Johnson saw Crow's face clearly. He was the lover of Haranda's wife. Damn it! "You killed Haranda?" Crow shrugged. "Yes, it was me." Johnson's heart sank, and he began to slowly retreat towards the entrance. But I don't know when, the entrance was full of people. Johnson looked around and smiled bitterly. "If you kill me, Faberla will not let you go. Someone will avenge me." Crow waved his hand. "No, no, no. We are professionals in killing people. The autopsy report will show that Senator Johnson died of a fire caused by a short circuit in the coffee machine. You can ask the manufacturer of this brand of coffee machine for compensation." Crow smiled and pointed to the coffee on the table. "Let me see the brand of this coffee machine, Mr. Coffee." "Congratulations, Mr. Johnson, you can apply for compensation, up to $10 million in compensation." Johnson looked at Crow in horror. He didn't expect that he dared to kill himself even though he knew Kamala was behind him. "Do you know what you are going to do? You want to kill a citizen of the United States, a senator. The government of the United States will not let you go." Johnson only realized now that Li Qing really wanted to kill him this time. "Well, then I'll wait, but unfortunately you can't see it." Crow looked at Johnson contemptuously. A younger brother had already covered his mouth with a towel with used sleeping pills, and Johnson fainted in despair. Crow motioned to one of his brothers, who nodded and started fiddling with the end of the coffee machine for a while, and then the coffee machine started to spark, and the entire wooden cabinet began to burn. Of course, the fire sprinkler on the ceiling had already been destroyed, and the fire alarm was also destroyed. No matter how the police investigated, they could only find that the fire started from the coffee machine and the firefighting facilities were aging. Even if Johnson was examined on the body, they would only find that he died of suffocation due to toxic smoke entering his trachea and lungs. Watching the fire getting bigger and bigger, Crow walked out with his brothers. Leaning against the car door, Crow finished smoking a cigarette before getting in the car. With such a fire, Johnson could not survive. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Hong Kong movies, I can see the loyalty value, I am not panicked at all. Author, Ban Wanqing Buletin Liang. Chapter 636. The fire spread quickly, and people around him started calling the police. Crow saw this and left in a car. If Johnson can survive in this way, it only means that he did not deserve to die. But this possibility is almost zero. The news that Johnson died in the fire quickly spread. Johnson was an active member of the Senate and had acquaintances in various departments. His death was widely lamented. Vice President Kamala sat blankly in his office. There were no lights on in the office, and the whole room was plunged into darkness. Only the cigar in Kamala's hand glowed red. Scattered across his desk were Johnson's autopsy reports, which he had obviously studied carefully. The autopsy report stated that Johnson's cause of death was smoke asphyxia, with toxic substances present in the nose, trachea, and lungs. That means he was still alive when the fire broke out, but he was smoked to death alive. The origin of the fire was also found, and the fire certificate stated that the fire was caused by a short circuit in the coffee machine. Both the autopsy report and the fire identification report deny the possibility of homicide. But Kamala doesn't believe this. As the vice president of a beautiful country, he naturally knows that there are not many ways to prevent people from dying unexpectedly. Moreover, he knew about the conflict between Johnson and Li Qing a few days ago. Johnson's death at this juncture had to make him suspicious of Li Qing. Kamala exhaled a long column of smoke. He thought of the time he spent with Haranda and Johnson again. Unexpectedly, within just 1 month, both of them left him. This made him a little sad. He wanted to take revenge, but his rationality had always told him that with his current strength, he could not quietly deal with Li Qing. As long as William is the Minister of Defense, he will not dare to do anything to Li Qing. What's more, House of Cards is now very dissatisfied, thinking that Haranda provoked William for no reason because of his instructions. There are also more and more doubts about him below. If William and Li Qing are provoked again because of Johnson's matter, and there is not enough profit motivation, I am afraid that not many people in the organization will support him. Alas, Kamala sighed deeply, opened the drawer and took out a photo of the three of them. It seems that this matter will have to wait. Don't worry, I will keep an eye on them like a poisonous snake. Give them a blow when they are at their weakest. After saying that, he directly packed up the information on the table and put them together with the photos into the bottom drawer. He believed that the next time he saw them, it would be when William and Li Qing fell. Li Qing saw the news of Johnson's death on TV and glanced at the crow sitting next to him eating watermelon. The work was too rough. Let Arthur do it next time. Crow raised his head from the half-flesh watermelon and looked at his big brother in confusion. Brother, you know, I usually use Big Baby to shoot my head. After speaking, he pointed at the half-flesh watermelon and said, that's it, boom. It's like an abstract painting by Picasso, with a hazy beauty. Li Qing and Zhang Dongzhi looked at each other and looked at the crow in surprise. They didn't expect that the crow without any ink in its belly could actually say Picasso's name. Seeing his eldest brother and Zhang Dongzhi looking at him in surprise, Wu Yao was also a little proud. Haha, you can learn something more or less by following Isabella every day. Li Qing lowered his head and thought for a moment. Picasso seems to be a representative of the modern painting school, Dongzhi. Picasso has painted abstract paintings. Zhang Dongzhi shook his head like a rattle and said that he had never heard of it. Brother, could the crow be talking about Van Gogh? Li Qing nodded and glanced at Crow. Anyway, it's the famous abstract artist. Crow was a little embarrassed. Isabella told him several times and he didn't remember it. Well, this is very Crow, Zhang Dongzhi gave a thumbs up sign. By the way, brother. Isabella's father wants to meet you. Crow quickly changed the subject. otherwise the two of them would laugh at him to death. His words stunned Li Qing, who was about to tease the crow, who? Isabella's father, former Vice President Carter. Crow curled his lips when he mentioned this name. He looked down on Carter, who made Isabella's political marriage. Huh? What does he want from me? Li Qing was a little puzzled. After all, he had never interacted with him before, and he hated him so much that Li Qing didn't have a good impression of him. Crow shrugged, who knows what this old bitch is going to do. If Isabella hadn't begged him several times, he wouldn't have said anything. Li Qing looked at Wu Wu speechlessly. It seemed that his brothers were following him in this regard and were in conflict with his father-in-law. But after all, he was Crow's future father-in-law, and even if he looked at the face of his future sister-in-law, Isabella, he would be embarrassed not to meet her. Well, then ask him to come to the villa tomorrow morning. Li Qing thought for a while and replied. Okay, then I'll let Isabella tell him. Crow nodded. He also knew that his eldest brother was giving him face. Otherwise, a retired former vice president would really have nothing to talk to in the new world. What's more, this man is still an old man with no knowledge of people. He pushed Haranda to the position of Deputy Minister of the Interior and kept Isabella alive for several years. By the way, Zhang Dongxiu, where is the pound of bark you said you would give me last time? In front of my eldest brother today, tell me when will you give it to me? Crow looked at Zhang Dongxiu and suddenly remembered this. Li Qing perked up when he heard this. He didn't expect that the two of them had a private transaction. Zhang Dongxiu looked embarrassed. He had completely forgotten about this matter. Why, did you suddenly remember this? When Crow heard Zhang Dongxiu's words, he knew that this guy had forgotten about this matter. You dog show, you scared me so much that I have to lock 2 doors when I do things now. You still want to deny your debt? Li Qing looked at the two curiously, wondering if something happened to them that he didn't know about. Zhang Dongxiu quickly told Li Qing about the bad things he did in the hospital, and Li Qing couldn't close his mouth. Zhang Dongxiu's trick was really a bit mean, and it might really scare Crow. I can't deny my debt. It's just that the top quality bark is difficult to get. Even if it is transported by plane, it will take several days. Zhang Dongxiu shrugged, indicating that it was not that he didn't give it, but that it hadn't arrived yet. Oh, hurry up, Crow frowned and said. Don't worry, don't worry. Zhang Dongxiu waved his hand to let him rest assured. Brother, the old Chinese doctor you mentioned. Crow said shyly. Li Qing. It seems that Zhang Dongxiu really scared Crow this time. I'll take you to Chicago tomorrow afternoon. Meng Sun said there's a famous old Chinese doctor there. He recuperated there last time. Li Qing looked helplessly at Crow, who was beaming with joy. There was nothing he could do. He had to take care of his own little brother. Hong Kong movies, I can see the loyalty value, I am not panicked at all. Author, Ban Wanqing Buletin Liang. Chapter 637. Early the next morning, Crow's cheap father-in-law Carter came to Li Qing's manor villa. Carter has been living in Hawaii, and this time he rushed back after hearing that something happened to his former son-in-law, Haranda. Unexpectedly, his daughter Isabella actually had a new boyfriend, and he was also a new world manager. The most important thing was that his daughter Isabella started to prepare for pregnancy. But after all, she is her daughter, and she still has to look after her. The main reason why he came to meet Li Qing this time was that he was not very satisfied with Crow. He investigated Crow through his own channels, and found that this man was incompetent and impetuous. Such a man was not worthy of his daughter, not to mention that in his own plan, Isabella could not have children. Mr. Carter, welcome to my humble home. We welcome you from afar. Li Qing looked at Carter, who was slowly walking up the steps, and took a few steps forward with a smile. After all, he is Crow's future father-in-law. If he doesn't look at the monk's face and the Buddha's face, He can't create family conflicts for his little brother, right? Hello, Mr. Liqing. Carter raised his head and looked at Liqing's villa. If this is not a humble place. Liqing smiled without saying a word and pulled Carter into the villa. Not to mention, although Carter is now over 70 years old, his legs and feet are still quite strong, at least he doesn't need anyone to support him. As soon as he entered the villa, he saw Crow coming out with a tea tray, which must have been prepared a long time ago. "Uncle, are you here? Please sit down." Crow scratched his head and said with a smile. Carter saw Crow frown slightly, said softly and stopped talking to Crow. Liqing raised his eyebrows, seeing Carter's attitude towards Crow. He had a guess in his mind. Crow's expression changed when he saw Carter's attitude towards him, but he still suppressed the anger in his heart. After all, he couldn't let Isabella get in the middle. Pursing his lips, he poured a cup of tea for his eldest brother and Carter respectively. Liqing picked up the tea and took a sip, while Carter ignored the Crow as if he didn't see it. A cold light flashed in Liqing's eyes. It was rare for anyone to look down on him in person. He placed the teacup in his hand heavily on the tea tray. Ding! The clear voice caught Carter's attention. "Mr. Carter, what are you doing here? I remember that there seems to be no business dealings between me and Mr. Carter." Liqing's voice was low and he looked at Carter with a smile on his face. The atmosphere in the whole room was extremely solemn, and Zhang Dongxiu, who was not far away, could feel that his elder brother was a little unhappy. "Mr. Liqing, I have two purposes here. One is to meet the legendary leader of the New World, and the second is to talk about your lax control of your subordinates and their entanglement with my daughter." As the former vice president of the beautiful country, Carter would certainly not be intimidated by Liqing's momentum and would directly state his purpose without any euphemism. Crow's face turned livid when he heard Carter's words, although he learned from Isabella that this cheap father-in-law was not very satisfied with him. Unexpectedly, he came to talk to his elder brother about this matter. "This is a matter between Isabella and I. It seems to have nothing to do with you." Before Wu Wu could finish his words, he was directly interrupted by Liqing, who stretched out his hand and sneered, "Ha ha, in what age are you still paying attention to these things? Don't you beautiful people pay attention to the freedom of love? Forget about me being a perfect match, how about breaking off the engagement?" After hearing Carter's words, he was dissatisfied with Crow, his poor son-in-law, and Liqing didn't tolerate him. Even if his younger brother was no good, he could only speak for himself. Other people? Not even a word. "Mr. Liqing, you don't often live in beautiful country. In fact, most of the marriages above the elite level in beautiful country are political marriages." Carter finally picked up the teacup and took a sip. "In terms of wealth, Isabella's mother's family is a famous car king. They have no heirs, and sooner or later these properties will be managed by Isabella. In terms of status, I was a former vice president and I still have some roots in the Republican Party. This subordinate of yours, Tisk." Liqing's face darkened, and his words were no different from scolding a father and a son. "That's enough, you are just the former vice president. Even if the vice president of the beautiful country stands in front of me, I won't take it seriously." He leaned forward and stared at Carter coldly. "Old guy, respect your calling me sir. Believe it or not, if your daughter wasn't Isabella, you wouldn't be able to leave this manor." The extremely oppressive eyes made Carter's expression change slightly. "Mr. Liqing, with all due respect, this is a beautiful country, not Southeast Asia. William can't solve everything. The water in the beautiful country is deeper than you think." He didn't want to conflict with Liqing if necessary, but on the matter of Isabella, he couldn't compromise. This is related to his plan. If he wants to get those properties, he must have Isabella firmly in his hands. This is why he found Isabella a gay husband. "Ha ha, you want to teach me a lesson as a washed-up politician? To be honest, the reason I let you in is to give the crow face. Since you don't appreciate it, then please do it. Li Qing spread his hands. He didn't want to get into trouble with this person. He wanted to see how this person broke up Crow and Isabella. After hearing Li Qing's words, Carter stood up and straightened his clothes. I hope you can consider my request carefully. Carter did not speak to the crow from beginning to end, which shows his attitude towards the crow and Isabella. Li Qing looked at Carter with a half smile. How can a big brother not support his little brother? If you have the ability, come over and see if our new world can handle it. Carter shook his head and turned away. Li Qing looked at Carter's back thoughtfully. This old guy will not give up. Big brother, do you want to? Zhang Dongzhou made a gesture of wiping his neck. Dog show. Don't mess around. He is Isabella's father. If you kill him, how can I live in the future? Crow hurried to Zhang Dongzhou and said nervously. Look at your little bit of ability. If I ask you, if you want to get married, just find an Asian. Foreign girls are not suitable for you. You haven't gotten married yet, but there are so many things. What will happen after getting married? Zhang Dongzhou snorted coldly. He was a little uncomfortable with Crow's indecisive attitude on this matter. Li Qing frowned. He felt that this matter was a bit strange. Carter came very abruptly. Even if he was dissatisfied with Crow and Isabella, he couldn't be so straightforward. Seeing that Carter is so eager to stop Crow and Isabella from being together, there must be something else. Crow, what are you doing with Isabella recently? Li Qing looked at Crow in confusion. Brother, nothing. Isn't it that Isabella said that she is 40 years old and wants a child, and we are actively preparing for pregnancy? Crow scratched his head embarrassedly. Li Qing and Zhang Dongzhou looked at each other and looked at Crow. You? Preparing for pregnancy? Hong Kong movies, I can see the loyalty value. I am not panicked at all. Author, Ban Wanqing Bulletin Liang. Chapter 638. Ahem, I actually don't care, it's just that Isabella is a few years older than me after all, so I understand her anxiety. Crow pretended that he didn't care. No wonder, you asked me for tree bark again, and asked your elder brother to take you to see an old Chinese medicine doctor. So, that's it? Zhang Dongzhou looked at him up and down in circles as if he didn't recognize the crow. Li Qing nodded secretly. It seemed that Carter's attitude was related to Isabella's preparation for pregnancy. Because he and Miranda had been going back and forth before, but Carter didn't show up. Now that Miranda is dead, Carter actually came to tell him to ask the crows not to harass Isabella. Damn it, if there is no ghost here, he would eat the tea tray. Dongzhou, let someone check Carter. Well, and Isabella's mother. Li Qing thought about the conversation with Carter just now. Carter mentioned that Isabella's mother was the daughter of the Car King. There was no guarantee that there was nothing else involved. Hey, that's great, brother, Zhang Dongzhou winked at Crow. Don't worry, I will check out her family's network, and then you will have more aunts and uncles. The crow opened his eyes and said, get out of here. Brother, old Chinese medicine doctor. Li Qing looked at the crow amusedly. He didn't expect the crow to be so concerned about this matter. Don't worry, I'll take a plane to Chicago after lunch. Crow's brows were overjoyed when he heard this, and he nodded vigorously. I'm going to see if lunch is ready. Zhang Dongzhou looked at the crow's back and rolled his eyes. Maid, it wasn't long after breakfast. Are you going to rush for lunch? Li Qing smiled and shook his head. It's rare for a crow to want to have a child. Dongzhou, you are not young anymore. Zhang Dongzhou smiled sheepishly when he heard what his eldest brother Li Qing said. Brother, I think I can wait a few more years. In fact, he also likes children, but he still hopes to wait a few more years with the young lawyer. Besides, he and his eldest brother have been running around all these years, so there is no time to have children. Well, you make your own decision. If it doesn't work, just take over the young lawyer like Gao Jin. Anyway, there are not many affairs in Xiangjiang now. Zhang Dongzhou nodded when he heard this, but he had no hope in his heart. The young lawyer was very enterprising and had no plans to have children in recent years. Li Qing, Zhang Dongzhou, and Crow had lunch early and boarded the private plane bound for Chicago. In the Maywood district of Chicago, the third largest city in the United States, there is a dilapidated street house with the word TCM written in big letters on a billboard that is about to fall apart. "Brother, is this it?" Crow pointed at the billboard in disbelief and said. Li Qing also frowned and looked at the dilapidated hut facing the street, a little unsure. "Probably, right." Zhang Dongzhou was about to poke his head inside, but was startled by the glass door that suddenly opened. A middle-aged Asian aunt walked out of the house and looked at the sneaky Zhang Dongzhou, Shen Jingbing. Zhang Dongzhou, who was scolded innocently, opened his mouth helplessly and swallowed back the national curse that was about to be spoken. "You're all here, let's go in and take a look." Li Qing believed that Meng Sun didn't dare to lie to him about such a thing, so he pushed the door open and walked in regardless of Zhang Dongzhou and Wu Wu. Zhang Dongzhou and Wu Wu looked at each other and followed him in. The furniture in the house is old and worn, and some places are covered with pulp. It is obvious that the owner of the house has no habit of cleaning. Crow touched the greasy table with disgust and made up his mind that he would never take the medicine prescribed here. Compared with impotence and premature ejaculation, he felt that his own life was more important. "Brother." Li Qing waved his hand to interrupt him. At the same time, Li Qing looked at the surrounding walls. Obviously, the banners all over the wall attracted his attention. Master of Gynecology, Buster of Impotence, Saving Life and Healing the Wounded, Exalted Medical Ethics, Knowledge of Rhinitis. There was also the occasional scent of Chinese medicine, which made Li Qing feel that due to his fame, this old Chinese medicine doctor must have had some troubles, otherwise he wouldn't have had so many banners. The most important thing is whether it works. Let the crow try it first. What if it works? Which one of you wants to see a doctor? An old but energetic voice came from the inner room, and it was obvious that the old Chinese medicine doctor had seen them. Li Qing walked forward with a smile. "Sir, are you Wang Quan? We were introduced by Meng Sun." When he got closer, Li Qing saw clearly the whole appearance of the old Chinese medicine doctor. He saw that the old Chinese medicine doctor had gray hair and bright eyes. He had a childlike appearance and was wearing a tang suit unique to China. Sitting on the chair, he looked at Li Qing and others with a smile. "Huh? Meng Sun? Who comes to see the doctor?" Zhang Dongzhou pushed towards the crow, and Li Qing pointed at the crow and said, "My brother, I have been feeling weak recently, and I feel a little powerless when it comes to matters between men and women. Show me." Wang Quan pointed to the stool opposite. "Sit down and stretch out your hands." Crow had no choice but to sit on the stool and put his right hand on the small cushion on the table. Wang Quan put his hand on the crow's pulse, squinted his eyes and felt the crow's pulse, and the smile on his face gradually disappeared. Both Li Qing and Zhang Dongzhou looked a little nervous, and the old Chinese medicine doctor couldn't help but frown. Crow looked up at his elder brothers Li Qing and Zhang Dongzhou with tears in his eyes. "I'm probably hopeless." "Shut up. Use the other hand," Wang Quan, an old Chinese medicine doctor, scolded. After a long time, the old Chinese medicine doctor took his hand away and let out a long sigh. "Is it because of your urine that the Viagra in Hanjiang River in Bangsa country exceeds the standard? Are you eating Viagra?" Crow was startled, remembering that Viagra had been constantly coming in recently, but he was too young to understand that sperm was expensive, and his body was severely depleted. "Miracle doctor save me," Crow shouted excitedly. But as a stick person, Zhang Dongzhou felt that he had been accidentally injured when he heard the old Chinese doctor's first words. It's true that good things don't go out, and bad things spread thousands of miles. Even the news that Viagra exceeded the standard in Hanjiang River could be reported to such a remote Chinese medicine clinic. Well, luckily you came in time. If you had come a few months later. Crow's heart skipped a beat, and he said with a trembling voice, "How about coming a few months later?" Wang Quowen raised his head and glanced at him. "I only have equipment, but it doesn't have that function." It's okay, Crow patted his little heart. Wang Quowen said shua 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 and filled the prescription on a piece of white paper. He shouted into the back room and a young man came out and took the prescription and took the medicine. Remember, abstain from sex while taking the medicine. There are 3 courses of treatment in total. You must abstain from sex during this period, Wang Quowen instructed. "Doctor, how long should you abstain from sexual intercourse?" Crow cried sadly. Asking him to abstain from sexual intercourse was even more uncomfortable than killing him. "At least, half a year." Crow was speechless. Half a year? He couldn't bear not being allowed to touch women for 3 days. "Remember my words, otherwise, you really won't lift it?" "Can Cabinda bark be used?" Zhang Dongzhou asked curiously. The old Chinese medicine doctor didn't even raise his eyes. Crooked way. Zhang Dongzhou. The old Chinese medicine doctor raised his head, but Li Qing caught his attention. He looked carefully at Li Qing's eyebrows and smiled. "Sir, do you need me to take your pulse?" Just by looking at his complexion, he felt that the pulse of the person in front of him must be unusual, and he was also delighted to see him. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Hong Kong movies, I can see the loyalty value, I am not panicked at all. Author, Ban Wanqing Buletin Liang. Chapter 639. Oh? Did the old man see that I'm sick? Li Qing raised his eyebrows and asked curiously. Crow stood up from his seat with a swoosh sound. "Old man, don't scare us, how could my elder brother be sick?" After saying that, Crow and Zhang Dongzhou looked at their elder brother with some worry. "Brother, come and sit down." Li Qing shook his head and smiled. He knew his own body and was very healthy. But he didn't refuse. He was also a little curious about Chinese medicine. Maybe this old Chinese doctor could really see something. Li Qing sat down and stretched out his hand on the cushion. Wang Quowen put his fingers on Li Qing's pulse. Zhang Dongzhou and Crow looked at Wang Quowen's expression nervously, fearing that he would frown. As soon as he took the pulse, Wang Quowen was attracted by Li Qing's pulse. He had been practicing medicine for decades and had never seen a person with such vigorous blood and qi, and the frequency of his pulse was much slower than that of ordinary people. This shows that this person's cardiopulmonary function is extremely strong. He couldn't help but think of what his master told him back then, a martial artist has a lot of blood and qi. Looking at the uncertain expression on the old Chinese doctor's face, Li Qing asked curiously, "What's wrong with my body?" Hearing Li Qing's voice, Wang Quowen came back to his senses. "Are you a martial artist?" Li Qing smiled, just moved his body casually, and a sound came out of his body, which sounded like the roar of a tiger or leopard. In Wang Quowen's astonished eyes, Li Qing smiled and said, "I know some farming skills." Just after hearing the thundering sound of tigers and leopards, and hearing Li Qing's words, Wang Quowen was completely speechless. Even Zhang Dongzhou and Crow on the side felt that their eldest brother was too versatile. "Awesome, awesome. I've seen a lot of martial artists, and your blood and qi are the most vigorous I've ever seen." Wang Quowen retracted his hand, and at this time he finally understood what it meant to be someone better than you. Hearing this, Li Qing asked curiously, "Are there many people who practice martial arts?" Wang Quowen shook his head. "Chinese martial arts are gradually declining, and there are very few now. Since I started practicing medicine, I have only seen a handful of people who practice martial arts, including you. Li Qing was stunned. He had only met less than 10 people in decades. It seemed that Chinese martial arts were really declining. Alas, let alone Chinese martial arts, the inheritance of Chinese medicine is about to be cut off. Wang Quan shook his head regretfully. At this time, the little boy who was picking medicine from the inner room came out, and a sack of Chinese medicine had been picked up. The crow looked at the sack of Chinese medicine and was about to collapse. "This, do you have to drink it until next year? After taking these medicines, I promise that you will regain your vigor," Wang Quan joked with the crow happily. "Alas, this is only here with me. Otherwise, you can get medicine outside according to my prescription, but it will be useless after drinking it." Wang Quan patted the sack. "Oh? Where did you get this from?" Li Qing looked at him in confusion. "Chinese medicine has lost its original status, not because it can't cure diseases, nor because the prescription is wrong, but because the efficacy is not enough. Take this dandelion for example. Different origins naturally have different efficacy. My medicine requires dandelion stems after the white dew. Now they are just dried casually, so the efficacy is very poor." Wang Quan shook his head. "Last time a patient came and said that there are very few Western medicines in Zirizi pharmacies. Now they are all on the shelves. I am afraid that our products have flowed abroad. It won't be long before Chinese medicine will become extinct. Maybe in 100 years, you will have to go to Zirizi or Korea to see a Chinese doctor." Wang Quan sighed. He had no way to deal with this situation. He had no choice but to come to the United States. Now he can only complain to the people who come to see the doctor. Li Qing also nodded in agreement. Now Western medicine is popular. In order to protect their own interests, they strongly belittle Chinese medicine, causing many people in China to begin to distrust Chinese medicine. "Haha, old gentleman, are you interested in going to Gotham with me? I will open a Chinese medicine clinic for you to see patients and promote Chinese medicine." Li Qing also had an idea and felt that it was a waste of talent for such an old Chinese medicine doctor to waste his time here. Wang Quan smiled and waved his hand. "Haha, thank you for your kindness. You are indeed a friend of Meng Xuan." He also said the same thing. "But I am used to staying here and don't want to go anywhere. Seeing patients here is also a matter of fate." In fact, he opened this small Chinese medicine clinic purely to kill time so as not to make his students unfamiliar. Li Qing looked at Wang Quan's look and didn't force him. He just took out a business card from his pocket. There was only Li Qing's name and contact information on the business card. "Master Wang, if there is anything you can't solve, you can call me at any time." Wang Quan took the business card, looked at it, nodded, and put it in his pocket casually. "Brother, I also asked the master to help me feel my pulse." Zhang Dongzhou smiled and came forward. After all, there are not many such opportunities. Li Qing looked at him with amusement. "Come." Zhang Dongzhou didn't have any problem, but his lumbar vertebrae were slightly dislocated, so Wang Quan straightened his bones. After Wu Ya paid the money, the three of them walked out of the small Chinese medicine clinic. The great doctor is hidden in the world. Li Qing looked back at the dilapidated Chinese medicine clinic and sighed. "By the way, Goshiu, when did your lumbar vertebrae dislocate? I'm with you every day, how come I didn't know?" Wu Ya was very curious about Zhang Dongzhou's lumbar vertebrae dislocation. Zhang Dongzhou rolled his eyes when he heard what Crow said, and kept complaining in his heart, "Meow, can I tell you that I twisted my waist when I hugged the little lawyer last time?" Li Qing looked at the sky getting darker. "Let's go." It's still a long way from the New World Hotel in Chicago. Chicago New World Hotel. Almost all the hotel executives stood at the door waiting anxiously. The guests coming and going were a little curious and kept talking about it. It seems that a big shot is coming to the New World Hotel. Ah, All the staff are out, there must be something big. John Kong is in front, it seems that the person is of high status. I'm a little curious, who is coming? John Kong is waiting respectfully. The people in the New World Hotel had no time to care about their discussions, they were nervously waiting for the arrival of the big boss. Did you ask Brother Crow? Where is the big brother? John Kong looked at his watch, his face looked a little nervous. Although they are old brothers of New World, this is the first time that big brother Li Qing has visited New World Hotel in Chicago, and he is a little nervous. I asked, and Brother Crow said it will take about 5 minutes. Hearing the reply from his younger brother, John Kong nodded and quickly tidied his clothes. Big brother will be here soon, so be alert. Don't embarrass me. Okay. Yes. A group of people answered one after another, and some people were curious about the big boss. You know, manager John Kong is a well-known figure in Chicago, and he actually waited at the door for more than half an hour. Hong Kong movies, I can see the loyalty value, I am not panicked at all. Author, Ban Wanqing Buletin Liang. Chapter 640. A luxury car parked in front of the New World Hotel. As soon as the car stopped, John Kong hurriedly took 2 steps forward and opened the back door respectfully. Brother, you are here. Li Qing got out of the car and looked at the younger brother in front of him, jokingly saying, John Kong, you have gained weight. John Kong was one of the first people to follow him from Xiangjiang to the beautiful country to conquer the world. When John Kong heard what his elder brother said, he scratched his head in embarrassment and laughed naively, the food is good, and I don't do much exercise. Li Qing shook his head and said with a smile, you kid, you are still so lazy. Hello boss, other hotel staff bowed and said hello at the same time. Okay, hello everyone. Let's go back to work. Li Qing waved to them and smiled. After hearing what the big boss said, they dispersed and went back to work. Don't do this next time, I don't like it. Li Qing glared at John Kong. John Kong felt a little aggrieved. This was not the first time that the eldest brother had come. Who knew that the eldest brother didn't like it? Yeah, I will definitely not do it next time, brother. Look at the profitability of the New World Hotel in Chicago. John Kong reported the hotel's operating conditions to Li Qing as he walked. Li Qing nodded from time to time and stopped to ask some questions. It wasn't until his eldest brother Li Qing entered the presidential room to rest that John Kong breathed a sigh of relief. At least nothing went wrong. John Kong, come here, come here. Seeing John Kong's room, the crow in the room next to him waved to John Kong. Brother Crow, what a bad idea you have, I don't like it at all. John Kong couldn't help complaining. It turns out that it was Crow who gave him the idea to welcome everyone. Brother, aren't you angry? It's okay. Woo woo, patted John Kong. He followed his elder brother Li Qing every day, and of course he knew that his elder brother would not be angry because of such a trivial matter. Kong, what do you think Brother Crow treats you? Crow hugged John Kong's neck and smiled obscenely. Well, Brother Weeview is a man of character. I think the first time I started eating meat was at Boland Street where Brother Weeview took me. It took me several months just to treat the disease. A trace of embarrassment flashed across Crow's face. Kong, please don't accuse me unjustly. I strongly recommended that young woman at that time, but you insist on being a female student. He said that person looked very much like Bai Yueguang from your middle school. John Kong was speechless by the crow. He was young at the time, but who knew that the dumpling wrappers of the female students were all covered in pulp? Kong, where is the most beautiful nightclub in Chicago? Crow looked around and asked in a low voice. He wanted to indulge himself before he started taking Chinese medicine. After all, abstaining from sex for half a year was no different than killing him. Brother Crow, I still have work to do, so I can't accompany you. John Kong looked confused. He was the manager and couldn't leave the hotel unless there was something special. Who the hell asked you to accompany me? Can't I go by myself? Crow slapped Jong Kong on the head. Jong Kong covered his head. Oh, well, the most beautiful nightclub is several blocks away from our hotel, in. Crow carefully wrote down the address and kicked Jong Kong away. How could he waste a long night in a hotel? After finally making a trip to Chicago, he had to experience the customs here. Rang knocked on the door of Zhang Dongzio's room. Xiu'er, don't say I didn't call you when I had something good to do. Come quickly. I'll take you to a good place. Zhang Dongzio heard Crow knocking on the door and opened the door. Crow, don't say I didn't warn you, the doctor told you to abstain from sex. No, 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 after tonight? Let's go to the nightclub to drink. Crow didn't give Zhang Dongzio a chance to refuse, and pulled him out directly. Isabella, will you be embarrassed if I know this? Zhang Dongzio asked curiously in the car. TCH, I was just acting on occasion. Do you think I really communicated with them in depth? I just handed over my inventory to prepare for abstinence in the next 6 months. I'm afraid that I will overflow with semen. Zhang Dongzio glanced at Crow and shook his head. He didn't believe a word of what Crow said. Hey, Xiu'er, the parking seems to be right here. Crow held the piece of paper in his hand and struggled to spell out the words Dr. Parker's office on the billboard outside. Crow, are you right? This is a doctor's office, Zhang Dongzio asked in confusion as he looked at the sign outside. He, Kongzi said, this is a private doctor's office on the surface, but in fact there is something special inside, and the locals know it. The Crow smiled like a thief and showed off to Zhang Dongzio. The two were about to get out of the car when Alexis drove up from a distance with 2 white men sitting in the car. Hey, move the car, you idiot, the white man on the passenger seat of the car shouted arrogantly. Zhang Dongzio and Crow looked at each other. I didn't even look at the ground when parking in Gotham. Now there are humming gangsters out to look for trouble. It is indeed the crime capital, Chicago. Wu Wu wanted to go forward and argue with him, but was stopped by Zhang Dongzio. He was here to have fun, not to fight. There is a space ahead. You go ahead, Zhang Dongzio pointed to the parking space in front of his car. I won't say it a second time, move the damn car. The white guy stretched out his hand and said impatiently. Crow took his time and lit a cigarette for himself. I asked you, why are you so awesome? You guys just won't move. Crow's words directly angered the 2 white people in the car. The young white man in the passenger seat chuckled lightly, patted the car door, and told the people next to him to turn off the car. He opened the car door, got out of the passenger seat, opened his clothes, and saw a black pistol exposed. The younger brother who was traveling with them also jumped out of the car and showed them the gun holster in his ribs. Zhang Dongzio and Crow smiled at each other, and Crow went directly to the back of the car and opened the trunk. He took a handful of Uzi from the car and threw it to Zhang Dongzio. He took the big baby and slowly closed the trunk. The 2 gangsters who were looking for trouble saw clearly what they were holding in the hands of Wu Wu and Zhang Dongzio, and immediately lost their composure. Now we are riding a tiger with a hard time getting off. Let's fight. If someone takes a hit from you, both of you will die. Don't fight, it's really hard to save your face. At this moment, a guy with few hairs on his head ran out from behind and came to the 4 of them. Hey, calm down, calm down. This is only a few hundred meters away from the police station. Crow ignored the fat man who came out to be the peacemaker, and looked at the white guy opposite him. Young man, if you dare to point a gun at you, Lord Crow, I'm afraid you've never died before. The white guy wanted to step forward, but the fat man pushed him and whispered, business matters. The man nodded, glared at Crow fiercely, and led his younger brother into the nightclub first. Oh, no more fun, Crow sneered contemptuously and threw the big baby into the trunk. Hey, you two, don't say I didn't remind you, they are members of the Flynn family, a powerful underground gang in Chicago. The young man just now was Venus, the heir to the Flynn family. There was a hint of threat in the words of the fat Mediterranean man. Crow glanced at him. Does who he is have anything to do with me? No one could stop him from having fun, and he didn't even pay attention to a small conflict. Hey, man, if you want to survive in Chicago, this has something to do with you. Zhang Dongzhou and Crow sneered. The gangster family, which was not even ranked in Chicago, posed no threat to them. Let's go, Xiu'er. I'm treating you tonight. Wu Wu hugged Zhang Dongzhou and walked towards the nightclub. Xiu'er, it's time for you to lose weight. I can't hold you anymore. Go away, I'm so strong.